All right, so it wasn't the smoothest year. It was our first year covering the Yankees, but they did end up making the playoffs despite what felt like they were going in the opposite direction at one point. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. He's Gary Sheffield Jr. We appreciate you guys, first off, for following us all year long. I know we really got rolling around June, and that was really when we started hitting our stride. But we have been covering this team all year. We just decided midway through the season, hey, let's do a show every night. And you know what, Gary, I think it worked out in our favor. I think it worked out for the community that we've built. And man, it's a celebration for the Yankees, but it's definitely a celebration for us here at Yankees Unloaded, because this season, regardless of what you say, I think we have talked about every possible scenario. I think at one point we were discussing this team really isn't that great in the second half of the season. We were discussing how this team could win the World Series. Going back to our initial predictions, I had them winning 94 games. You had them winning 93. We thought that maybe they could do something, maybe not. We never once said this team will be your World Series champions, though. That is one thing for sure. So looking at this game, looking at the scope of the season, the Yankees have clinched a playoff berth. Where are you, Gary, on this team?
The job is not finished, and I'm happy that our players are able to enjoy this, right? They're able to pop champagne, and that's a good thing, because we have to do this first. We can't just look into the future, which you've mentioned quite a few times now. Actually, it was maybe 2 or 3 days ago where you said this Yankees team can't shortcut and look at matchups and necessarily overlook people who are right in front of them. And I think that's absolutely true. But let's be clear. This has been a rodeo. We've got no closer for the better part of 3 months, right? And a lot of people will tell you with this back end of our bullpen, we're going nowhere, right? And for a couple weeks there or a month or so, I would have agreed with them. Where are we going, right? At one point, it feels like we're aboard the Royal Caribbean the first month and a half of the season. Next thing we know, it's the Titanic. And now we're afloat again. We had a life raft. We saw Weaver, right? Conley, maybe his fastball didn't return to where we expected it to return, but that changeup's been one of the best pitches in baseball all year long now. So the Yankees have landed on their feet. This job's not done. It's not all sunshine and roses, but I'll tell you this, Jake, we're in a much better situation than I shouldn't say our rivals, but the people who are in front of us, and that was the Baltimore Orioles. They're in front of us in the standings for quite a few there, and now we're in a situation we're playing good baseball at the right time. So at this point, the Yankees have a clear job, and that job is not just to stay healthy going into October. No, it's not, Jake. Our role is to be the hottest team in baseball when postseason ball starts. That is Aaron Boone's job right now. I understand this isn't over. We're up to a 5-game lead on Baltimore. So you have to like our chances. But when we're sitting here, right, 2 weeks from now, and we say, okay, where do we stand? The Yankees must be the hottest team in ball. And frankly, I like our chances. I know we're a flawed team, but I'm trying to look at this thing with rose, what do they call them? Rose glasses, whatever you call them. So, Jake, how are you feeling about this team?
I'm feeling great, Gary. I'm feeling spectacular. And you know why? Because the Yankees, they are lucky. You know how lucky they are? Think about how lucky the Yankees are. They had a chance to completely miss the postseason this year, right? Mm-hmm. They had a closer that wasn't a closer. He was on pace to break the Yankees' blown saves record. Mm-hmm. You have to understand, and I don't think people are realizing this, there are not many teams, if any, in the league that would have been able to overcome what Clay Holmes put in the Yankees' lap. So the fact that you get to live and, do something another day and fight another day, that is why I am so ecstatic about this team. Because do you know how often it is in any sport? They say, oh, it's a shame they figured it out at the tail end of the season and it was too late. They're already eliminated from the playoffs.
Right.
Well, there's a lot of teams in the league right now who should be freaking out about the Yankees, and not in a good way.
Yeah, we did all this without any help from Clay Holmes all year. He was good for the first month of the season, but you're talking about a player who I believe
that's how I look at it, Gary.
12 or 13 games. So at this point, you have to wonder, what does this team really look like in terms of wins and losses, right? If this Yankees team had the division wrapped up, which probably should have been 2 weeks ago, let's be honest here.
Absolutely.
But you're talking about a team who wins over 100 baseball games. So now suddenly, what conversation are we in
the major leagues?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have talked about it.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah. And we've talked about it. Is this team considered a great team? I don't know if I would look at this Yankees team and say this is a great unit, but we have to remember, what's the target here? Are we trying to be remembered like the 98 Yankees? As far as I'm concerned, roster-wise, this team will never be in that conversation. But you know what they are in conversation for? Being the best team of the teams right now in baseball. So right now, these teams in the league, none of them are great. None of them. The Dodgers aren't great. I said a month and a half ago, this Baltimore Orioles team that's on our heels seemingly for months on end, this is not a great baseball team. Craig Kimbrell, remember that closer that everybody was freaking out about? Yeah, Craig Kimbrell was designated for assignment this week. He was that bad. Useless. He was trying to invent a changeup, which he never wanted to throw. He's gone now. So now Baltimore has to figure out, how do we close games? But how do we even start a game? They don't even have starting pitching. So we actually had the conversation just before going live. Do the Yankees want to run into Baltimore in the postseason? Actually, this is one of the coldest teams in Major League Baseball. Not a conversation we expected to have. It seemed like Jackson Holiday got there. Oh, this team's got everything. They've got everything going for them. They're getting all the clutch hits. Corbin Burns is lights out. Now suddenly they can't win a ball game. So the Yankees just stayed the course. It was ugly. It just was. And frankly, all our job is now is, what are we getting from each guy to help us win the World Series? No one's going to remember who we played. They're not going to remember at all. They're not going to remember anybody other than the Yankees or the winner in general. So I'm feeling good, and I want to talk about some of these matchups because I know later in the show we're going to talk about those matchups. So, take it from here.
Yeah. So, before we do get to the matchups, though, your plan going forward, you would play all your starters, right? I mean, I would absolutely do the same. We talked about this a little bit last episode, but now that it's official, they are in the postseason, and it sure sounded like Aaron Boone wanted to win the AL East. That's just the vibe I got from his interview. So it doesn't feel like this is somebody, despite the fact that he is the same guy that will sit Giancarlo Stanton 3 days in a row, including an off day, despite the fact that, he'll do things that frustrate us to no end for the betterment of the players and, their health. It doesn't seem like a guy that's willing to take his foot off the gas pedal here late September and take them out of this rhythm, because say what you will, when you have a rhythm like the one the Yankees have right now, winning 2-1 feels like winning 10-2. I mean, this was a huge game. This felt like a postseason game. Clay Holmes blew it, and then they're able to come through and still win the game. And you know what? Ian Hamilton, he looks healthy. He looks like he's going to be an asset now. And this is what happens when you throw these guys in at the end of the year and you see what they're made of. And we're now finding out that Ian Hamilton, he's going to be ready for the postseason, Gary. He's ready right now. And Luke Weaver has turned into a freaking monster on the mound.
Yeah, hell of a play, by the way, from Hamilton, getting a guy to swing and miss and throw his bat at the guy running at third, who then runs into the dugout, and then we backpick him at third. What the hell was that? Hey, I'm sorry. What in the world was J-Rod doing there? Before we get into what the Yankees should do, what was that?
I want to talk about overrated.
No idea. You're not a J-Rod fan.
People said Jazz Chisholm is the most overrated player. Not people.
They did say
peers.
That. Right.
If J-Rod didn't win the home run derby, no one ever mentions his name.
Yeah, and the players voted for this, as you mentioned. Do they really care about home run derbies? J-Rod has been a massive disappointment. I know he had a big game yesterday, but you're talking about the totality of what he's done the last 2 full seasons. It's been disappointing. They didn't give him that big contract. really that Bobby Witt Jr. contract before Bobby Witt Jr. ever existed. And he has not delivered on that contract. He just hasn't. So we will go into detail really on that deal. But Jake, to answer the question, I know that Aaron Boone isn't going to tell us, yes, we're going to prioritize health as opposed to trying to win the division. That's not really the conversation at hand. It's, do we go win the division? And then now that the division's wrapped up, do we then prioritize health rather than staying hot to go into a game one ready to play? Or do we maximize our opportunity to stay healthy going into game one? And I know there are a lot of people who say, this is a team that's dealt with injuries in the past. We need to do everything we can to stay healthy. And I understand that perspective. But Jake, we haven't won in 14 years. And what do we know about World Series champions? They most often are playing their best brand of baseball in the final couple days of the season. We saw the Arizona Diamondbacks. They finished strong through the regular season last year. And people say, well, they went and got a wild card and they were able to beat the Dodgers. But what people fail to give you the context there, Jake. The context is that the Diamondbacks were excelling, right? Accelerating through the regular season. They get to the wild card, and now they're ready to play and punch someone in the mouth. They didn't lay off the gas pedal for a week and a half, be the wild card, and then go beat the Dodgers, right? So in my opinion, the New York Yankees, regardless of outcome, regardless of how this goes the rest of the way, everything you got every day to win the game, because it's good practice for October. I think it's a good habit to have and good karma in general. So yeah, I'm not dealing with Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Giancarlo Stanton sitting in the dugout and then having a bunch of Joe Schmoes hitting for the Yankees and saying, well, none of these games matter. And then suddenly on a Thursday and Friday night, they're telling us the games matter again. I think that is bad juju. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, it sends a lot of mixed signals. And, I would say the one time it would be acceptable, last game of the year. If you want to give these guys an opportunity that are on the 40-man roster and you call them up for that game, you give a guy maybe like Chase Hampton, you give him the start end of the season, just see what he's made of, because you've already clinched the AL East at that point. You have the number 1 seed. I'm fine with that. One game. But if it's like the rest of the 10 games that they have left on the schedule, and you're just like, I don't see him doing that. I'm just saying. But I will say Aaron Boone has a chance to do something very funny. And that would be to say, yeah, I think we really need Anthony Vulpi in the postseason. So we're going to give Oswaldo Cabrera the nod for the next 10 games just because we really want to keep him fresh. And then Oswaldo Cabrera,
oh my God,
he proves himself in the field.
Yeah.
They end up winning every game or whatever, and then he's starting in October. One can only hope. And look, I got to tell you, because this is going to be mainly a positive show. There's a lot of good to come out of this game. But Anthony Vulpi has gotten to the point with me that I've seen guys get sent down struggling way more than he is. And it's time for you to stop looking at his actual totals and look at what he is since the All-Star break. I mean, he hits 235 in July. August, he hits 247. Now he's hitting 163. He's just, you mentioned to me, you're like, hey, guess his on-base percentage for September.
You weren't able to guess it.
I thought it was going to be like 220. No, it's now in the 160s. I mean, come on.
Well, hold on a second. I don't want to cut him short. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Is in the last 15 games of Anthony Volpe's career, and that is not counting today's 0 for 4 performance. Okay, so this number is actually worse than what I'm reading. Anthony Volpe's on-base percentage, we're not picking on him. We're just reading his stats. His on-base percentage the last 15 games is 164. His batting average is 151. So you'd say, well, yes, his batting average may be low, but what's his slugging? Is when he gets a hit, is he doing damage? No, his slugging percentage is 151, which actually tells the story. Anthony Volpe, the last 15 games, he's hit nothing but a single. That's actually what that says. If your slugging is the same as your batting average, it means you only hit singles, whatever that sample size is. And by the way, 15 games is a long sample size. I don't care what anybody says. If you don't hit an extra base hit not one time, in 15 games, essentially what you're telling me is you are a glove and nothing else, which, by the way, Aaron Boone has said his glove is making such an impact on this team that he has to play. That's what he's telling us with his lineups. He tells us he builds the lineups, and after he tells us he builds that lineup, when we see Anthony Vulpi in there essentially every day this season, right? Maybe 3 or 4 days we didn't see him, but that is the overwhelming majority of the season. So they're telling you into the postseason, Anthony Vulpi is on the field because of what he does in the field. Nothing of what you see with his bat. And to which the question essentially arises, is that good enough long-term to be the shortstop of the Yankees? I come up to the conclusion that unless we see massive improvement from Anthony Vulpi, he should be nowhere near shortstop at all. I'm not talking about fielding. I'm talking about being the shortstop of the Yankees. If we don't see massive improvement from this player with the bat, because being a good defensive shortstop, if that's all we were looking for, why didn't we just sign Brandon Crawford 3 or 4 years ago? Why is that, right? We knew you need to bring the stick to the yard, and right now he's not bringing it at all. But frankly, if the Yankees want to win a World Series, he's just got to be Ozzie Smith over there at short. He just has to be.
Yeah, I mean, his strikeouts are up there now over, 150 on the year. He has 167 from last year. I guess really what I see here is a guy that hasn't gotten that much better. And you could say what you will about the average, but I think the average is hiding the real idea here is that he slugged better in 2023. He hit more home runs in 2023, and his OPS was higher than it currently is right now in 2023. So is this a regression? Is this who he is? The Yankees better hope to God this isn't who he is. Because I don't care what anyone says. Oh, I'll take a guy that can score 100 runs a season. Well, he's got 88 right now, so he's not going to hit 100. And he has 148 hits instead of 113 in 2023. But I don't know. I would take the 2023 bat more because
I was going to ask you that.
I'm getting 10 home runs.
Right.
Yeah, no,
it's a huge difference.
His WAR was higher, by the way, by a point, 3.2 to 3.1. So
so that was exactly what I was going to ask you, because you're talking. We're not only going to spend
stuff.
No, that's fine. No, you're a smart guy, so I knew you were going to do something smart. So
his D-WAR is a point higher, by the way, 2.4 last year, 1.4 this year.
Really? Okay. Well, I mean, that's, I guess, not too much of a surprise given what we've seen late in games, especially in the big games this season. But where I'm at with this is that a lot of people will tell you, you cannot have a guy who's 5'9", $180, go out there and hit 200, regardless of how many home runs he hits, unless you're hitting 40 jacks. How are you justifying being out in the field every day? To which we came into this offseason, Anthony Vulpi said, there's something clear I want to work on. And we're only going to talk about this a couple minutes, so don't think this is going to be a negative show. But when you come out and you tell us, I'm flattening out my swing, he's telling us, I'm not prioritizing the power game anymore. I'm going towards contact and getting hits, right? So that batting average should skyrocket. It shouldn't be anywhere near league average, which is exactly where it's at. It's at league average. And the slugging percentage is not at league average. So it's now massively below league average. So you have a player who's going to strike out 160 times this year. He struck out 160 some times last year. He hit 20 home runs last year. This year, he's going to hit, 12 or 13 at max? So he absolutely regressed offensively. He got worse. Regardless of the adjustments he made, he got worse. So defensively, Anthony Volpe's a nice little player. Good little player. But to say that this is your top prospect, he, at the very least, can be part of the solution. He can do something to help the Yankees in October. There's no doubt about that. He's got the legs to affect a game. Obviously, he can steal bases. He can score from first, score from second on a single to a strong arm in the outfield. He can do all these things. But, man, Jake, when you're talking about your top prospect, Anthony Vulpi, the untouchable prospect, we're not picking on him. We're simply reading his numbers and saying, is this enough? And a lot of people will answer and say, well, he's a young player, Gary. They'll say that to everybody. This is a young player. This is a 23-year-old young guy. A lot of time left. But I guess the question is, if you're 23 and nobody can judge you for what you do on the field, they say, well, we've got to give him till he's 24 or 25. Who's to say we can't do that for every player in the big leagues? No matter what their performance is, you just chalk it up to they're young. We don't do that for the rest of baseball. Why not? Well, because they weren't at the top of lists. They weren't at the top of the prospect list, and a lot of guys like Brian Cashman who want to be right about this player. I think that's what we saw. We saw a player who was untouchable in terms of playing, and maybe that hurt his development. I don't know what the answer is. All I know is we've got to hope that this player gets a lot better this offseason, and I don't want to project too far into the future, but he's been a disappointment offensively. There's no question about that.
I think the whole dialogue, at least for me, I'm speaking for me, you might feel differently. The whole dialogue of he's young, you have to remember he's young, give him time. It's not coming from a place where I just want this guy to fail and I'm tired of him. It's coming from a place where this is an organization that could move to a your B boss, okay? This is an organization that has an Oswald Peraza that is waiting, that has done, he has more experience in the postseason than Anthony Vulpi, good experience, albeit short, and yet he's not on the postseason roster. He won't be, but Vulpi is. And then
so you're pro competition.
I am. And then Oswaldo Cabrera, who I think has played his way, and I know they disagree, but I think they're wrong. Oswaldo Cabrera has played his way into the lineup every day. He should be in the lineup every day. He makes your team better. When you watch him, don't you just see postseason player? He comes through in these spots. And it's like, he just feels like a guy, him and John Birdie feel like guys that are going to be called upon in big moments this postseason. And they're going to be a big reason why this team is in the ALCS and maybe even further.
Okay, I kind of agree with you on the Cabrera aspect because it seems like he's got that Lindor flair. Now, he's nowhere near the player. He's just not. But what we've learned with postseason baseball is that it's not the best players that are the best performers in October. Sometimes it's energy, sometimes it's fit, sometimes it's utilization of how a manager uses that player, right? Raul Ibanez, not the greatest player in the world, but we've mentioned him a few times on the show. He had a huge impact, right? Huge impact in October for the Yankees. And sometimes that is just being in the right role. You're mentioning that Cabrera could increase his role, whether that be first base, whether that be shortstop. There are a lot of different ways that the Yankees can find a way to get him in this lineup. And I know we're not talking about a superstar player. We're just not. You've projected him as a player that you could see hitting 280 sometime in the future, or if he played every day. But unfortunately, that's not what we've seen. But I will say this, Jake. He's got a lot more potential heading into October. I think a lot of people view him as a player who can make an impact on a series. Not something we'll predict, but he's got the potential to do that. He's got the flair for the dramatic. He's fun. He's energetic. Very similar to what you see out of Jazz Chisholm. So, yeah, no, I'm not against that. But Birdie, I think Birdie just has a niche job on this team, is to run the bases, pinch hitting situations, pinch running situations, throw them out in left field when you need them, and in extra innings when you need to drop down a bunt, Birdie can do that as well. So I just think in general, offensively, Cabrera and Birdie just present more plans of attack than Anthony Volpe at this stage of his career, and that's no knock on him as a player. It's just his development. If he develops faster, I would love to cheer for him.
Yeah, and I want to bring this up because I'm not sure everyone's aware of this, so I just want to make sure everyone is aware of this. The entire point of a ghost runner is kind of like why there's only one overtime in the NFL. When it's the postseason, they're not trying to hurry up games. They are fine with them lasting forever. It's the postseason. Right. So there's no ghost runner. So I want to make that clear. I don't know if everybody knows that, but there's no ghost runner in the postseason.
So Birdie won't be our designated ghost runner if that's the way you were planning on him being utilized.
Yes, right. Yes. That's why I wanted to mention that with Birdie, because Birdie's won 2 games being that. But he's not going to be that. I know. He's not going to be that, but that's okay. I mean, you know, they get a huge hit out of Stanton in the 9th inning. You bet your ass Birdie's going out there and running for him at second, you know.
And that's valuable for this team. So we This
Dave
is something
Roberts.
you acknowledge.
And we don't have to we don't have to get into that, but Dave Roberts was a big vital reason why the Red Sox won, and it's because of his pinch running ability. And when it comes to the postseason in any sport, all of the fundamentals, all of the mental errors and things like that, it's all ballooned, good and bad. Mental errors are really bad and they're ballooned, and it is an avalanche. So that means guys who like Victor Robles, who we were seeing today, who's warming up, being a pinch runner at first for the Mariners, guys like that, this is their World Series. This is their chance. Guys that are pinch runners are never more valuable than they are in the postseason. If you want your name to be etched in stone, if you want to be a part of the highlights when people go back and they watch old highlights of baseball series, in the postseason, that's your opportunity. So John Birdie, he's got a very important role. Let's not discount that at all. Not saying you were, but yeah, in conclusion, I agree with you. I do think that if Birdie has to come through in a pinch hitting standpoint, I think I trust him. I think he's a better hitter than Rizzo. I think he's a better hitter than Verdugo.
Well, he's a better hitter than Vulpi, isn't he?
He's a better hitter than Vulpi. I mean, this is a guy hitting 270 before he got hurt. So, right. I mean, I think the only reason he has a demotion is because they have Jazz Chisholm, and they're not trying to complicate the left field any more than they already are with Jason Dominguez and Verdugo and Judge, and figuring out how those guys are going to be in the lineup, and Stanton will be in the lineup. So I think that's entirely why we haven't seen Birdie, is because, I mean, he was playing left field in the minors. So
I'm actually okay with this, though. Even though Birdie is a good enough player to play,
he'll be back next year.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm just good with the current situation, because you have to remember, if Torres is on his way out the door after this year, you're talking about Jazz Chisholm probably moving back to second base. And now you open the door for 35-year-old Birdie. And if you can find a massive upgrade, the Yankees should absolutely capitalize on that. But as of now, I'm good. Don't muck up the water in left field. Jason Dominguez needs to play, right? We need to find ways to get him on the field. And there's no reason to bring another veteran in. And just for the sake of saying, well, he's just a good player, we should find a way to play him. Well, we've got to develop Jason Dominguez so he has an impact in October as well. So I'm good with Birdie being on the bench. I'm absolutely fine with it. But Cabrera is the player that I think we really both agree on, that there's something better there on the horizon, something bigger for Cabrera in October. We just don't know exactly what that is, but it just seems like he's got the energy that will matter in October, and not a nervous energy that we're used to seeing from the Yankees in October, where Chapman's sweating bullets, right? Like it's not that energy anymore. It's not that sweated out energy. It is a player that looks like he wants to be there, a player that looks like he's not nervous to be there, someone who looks like he knows what's going to happen. Even though he hasn't been the greatest player, something good can happen. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to his postseason, and he didn't really get an opportunity. Well, he got an opportunity. He didn't do well. He had 2 hits, and I mean, one of them was a double. Another one was a home run in the postseason. He was 2 for 28. I mean, that's not. He can't feel good about that.
No, he cannot feel good about that. And by the way, before we talk, I know we're going to talk matchups. Can we please talk about Nestor Cortez here just for a second? Because Nestor Cortez, again, maybe last episode, maybe the episode prior, we've been talking to people about, yes, there was a time where Nestor Cortez was throwing that little loopy cutter. He just couldn't get it off the center of the plate. He was giving up a lot of home runs, to the point where Aaron Boone was actually coming out and saying, why do all of our mistakes inside the strike zone have to end up in the stands? He was sending a message to players like Marcus Stroman, to players like Nestor Cortez, to players like Carlos Rodon, that you don't always have to make mistakes over the plate. This was a clear message. And by the way, that is good management. That is putting players on blast to do your job. Simple as that. Without naming names, do your job better. And you know what Nestor Cortez has done since then? Some players have done something different with that information. But Nestor Cortez, he's shown up. That cutter that was missing over the heart of the plate and giving up damage, that's now on the corner or in off the plate. It's where that pitch is intended to be. That's the reason Mariano threw that pitch for 20 years with success. It was either on the corner or in off the plate. Now, Nestor Cortez is no Mariano, but certain styles and with certain pitches just work in this league. Nestor Cortez, that four-seam fastball up in the zone, it's now up. It's no longer down the middle of the plate. It's high spin. Nestor Cortez has been excellent. He just has been. And when you show up to a series against the Seattle Mariners, what do we know about him? We know Seattle's going to struggle to score. They're going to struggle to hit. They struggle really to create traffic. Today they created some traffic, but he knows he can pitch out of those situations. He did exactly that. Nestor Cortez has been reliable this past few weeks. And it's the reason why our last episode I mentioned he's one of those players that if we go with a shorter rotation, I'm absolutely looking Nestor Cortez's way. I just am.
Yeah, he'd be number 2 for me right now in actuality, which is kind of hard for me to say. But I mean, yeah, I think what I've seen from him, even going back to August, if you take out the St. Louis Cardinals, that start was terrible. You take that start out in, I think it was September 1st. His last six out of the last 7 starts, he's given up 2 runs.
So the overwhelming majority of his starts, he's been excellent.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. 7 innings, 6 2/3, 5, 4 1/3. Today was 6. I mean, yeah, he didn't even give up a hit in the 4 1/3. He came in as it wasn't even a start. It was the double-barreled bullpen, and I mean, seeing what he could do in that got me really excited for the future because they can find all different ways to use these guys. Speaking of which, before we get into the matchups, we do have a mailbag from Ed W. that kind of goes into that, right?
Let's do it.
So, and before we do that, field level shout outs go to Juan Cepeda, Kid from LI, Carlos Marrero, Jeff J, Ed W, Brian Fuchs, Ryan Hoffman, Rich Squires, Joshua Halleckman, Egyptian Magician, Nick Gomes, Jalen Sestero, JT Roberts, Mickey G, and Ronnie. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah. Salute to the supporters of this show. I mean, they're huge, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Come on, you guys are members every month. We really appreciate you guys. So yeah, so what is that mailbag?
The mailbag, and it's a doozy. Ed, you're giving me DBQ essays.
Yeah, per usual. That thing's an MLA format.
If it's not too early for this conversation, it's not. Can we get specific for the ALDS rotation discussion? Because we have concrete dates for the ALDS, October 5th, 7th, 9th, 10th, and 12th. That means there are 5 days between game 1 and game 4, game 2 and game 5. So the schedule allows a 3-man rotation on 5 days rest. Among the things on my mind is that it gets the best 2 out there twice and opens the possibility for double barrel situations to get the best arms out there and address the pitch count dilemmas and keep pitchers fresh. I don't really see a difference in this decision based on opponent. Can you discuss what your thoughts are for the rotation roster given the schedule?
I'm dying to answer this. I'm dying.
This is a banger.
Yeah, this is a great question. Okay, think about what he's actually saying here in this question. He's essentially telling you guys, we can go with a 3-man rotation. This is the gist of it. 3-man rotation, and you can pick your favorite 3 guys, and they can go on full rest. And then you can just miss and whatever, match with the rest.
Miss and match.
Okay, Jake, it's clear. For me, I know it's probably Garrett Cole, Luis Heel. So you got Schmidt and Nestor, right? Those 4 guys are probably the guys that you're saying, okay, I really want them in a postseason mound. The rest of the guys, I know we're paying Rodon a lot of money. I'm not looking forward to seeing what Carlos Rodon does in the postseason. I'm just not. I know that some people take that as criticism. They see it as a cheap shot, whatever you want to say. But when you go out there and you pitch 3 innings and you give up 6, you give up bombs, and then the next day you show up and you go 8 innings with 1 hit ball, and then the next day you wet down your sheets. Well, at some point or another, for me as a podcaster who covers this team, I can tell you genuinely, it's just my opinion, that I have no idea what you're going to do tomorrow. So if tomorrow is a postseason game, I don't trust you. I just don't. You may be great and you may be buns. So for me, it's just a question of, is it Heel? Is it Schmidt? Or is it Cortez? Because obviously Garrett Cole is in that 3. I would say, personally, I feel the most confident, this may seem weird, with Heel, Cole, and Nestor.
Yeah, I mean, I look at Carlos Rodon as of late, because what are we getting from these guys? End of the day, we're probably getting what we're seeing right now. That's who they're going to be.
Okay.
Rodon gives up runs. He's been excellent in September with a 2.60 ERA, right?
Yes.
But it's a different ball game. He's given up 5 runs in September. I just said Nestor Cortez has given up 2 in the last 6 of the last 7 starts.
Right.
That spans August. So when the name of the game is don't give up any runs and having a quality start no longer matters as much, because no one cares about quality starts in the postseason. You can't give up a run. You have to look at giving up a run as you can lose the game now.
Yeah, if you give up a run, like let's just say it's the 4th inning and you give up a 2-run bomb. You're not going to look at it and say, well, I've probably got one more run I can give up and we can consider this a good start. No, there's no such thing as, was that a good start or was it not a good start? It is simply, as soon as the game starts, first pitch happens, every single pitch, everyone's fighting and clawing to not give up one single run, because every time you give up a run in postseason baseball, runs don't come very often. They just don't. So you're looking at it like you give up a solo bomb in the first inning. Oh, well, what's he going to do the rest of the start? It just doesn't really work that way, because you know what may happen, Jake? You could have Rodon go out there in the 3rd inning, walk the bases loaded and give up a 3-run double. Rodon may be off the mound right then and there. There's no time to save the start. So that's what worries us about this player. He's a player who struggles with base on balls. He's a player who struggles with the home run. And now I know what a lot of people are thinking. There are a few players on our roster that struggle with the home run ball, but not both, not walking and homers, right? So that's the worry, right? He's a highly paid player. He can miss bats. He has value. But you know where I see Rodon? You know what value I see in him? I see his value the same way that I saw Patrick Corbin's in that World Series run. Not that he's not a pitcher who can make an impact in a postseason. It's that, does he have to start games to make an impact for this team? I'm putting Rodon in that Patrick Corbin role. Someone comes out in the 3rd or 4th inning, bring out Rodon, see if he's hot. If he's not, you pull him off the mound. If he is, he could potentially save a game for you. So that's the role I'm putting him in. I'm taking him out. He could pitch the rest of the game, double-barreled action. So there you go.
No, I like that. And Rodon's numbers look a lot better than this guy is disqualified from any starting mound, period. He looked really good in relief, and that is Stroman. Stroman, as a starter, has given up 13 consecutive runs in 4 starts. So we already went over his ERA. I don't want to keep crapping all over the guy. But the point is, right now, he seems way more figured out as a reliever, a guy that can come in and give you 3 innings, more than he does as a guy that's going to give you 7. You're going to feel good about it. So I would definitely lean away from Stroman. And you mentioned it early in the season, Gary. You said Stroman's never pitched this many pitches before in this many innings in a season. And that innings limit, I mean, he's now at 151 1/3.
He's had a much better season than I think a lot of people are willing to give him credit for, because
he
here in New York, we just kind of judge people based on, well, what do you look like in comparison to a really good Garrett Cole season? I'm just here to tell you right now, Marcus Stroman wasn't brought here to be that. He was brought here to be a veteran. He's going to work the corners. If he's got a pitcher strike zone for the day, he's going to work off the corners for strikes, and he's going to do that consistently. And maybe in the second half of the year, he's shown a pedigree to break down. He's got a small body, right? Small body, bigger arm. And I'll tell you this, for him, I'm happy with what Marcus Stroman's done this year. It's part of the reason why I wasn't upset when he was brought to this team. But as far as a shorter sample size in October, We need our best arms. I don't think Marcus Stroman's a part of that group, but he still has a chance to be an impact in October, not in a close game in the 7th inning. We're talking about a situation where the Yankees need to burn innings. There is value in that. Marcus Stroman can do that job.
Yeah, I agree. And then last, but definitely not least, Luis Heel, because there's no point of even talking about Garrett Cole. He's the ace, whatever. Luis Heel is definitely starting for me in the postseason. Although we didn't, I'll go over Schmidt in a sec. But Heel has a 1.13 ERA in September. I don't think he could be any more prepared than he is right now. I mean, he absolutely is ready. And I've made kind of mention of this in the past. I'm hiding him. I'm putting him as the third starter. That's what I'm doing. I'll put Nestor as number 2, and I'll hide Heel. So are you gonna third starter?
Are you gonna move Schmidt? Are you gonna move Schmidt to the bullpen? Go high leverage innings?
I mean, I'd probably go with a 4-man rotation if I'm being honest. And I'd probably
I mean, that's
Schmidt.
the safe. Yeah, that's the safe pick. You can definitely do that. There's no question about it.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the Yankees are concerned, remember what I said yesterday. I understand what his numbers look like pitching the 8th inning. I do. They're much better than what we saw before, which is what Holmes looks like in the closer's role. He's clearly much better in the 8th inning. It's an easier job. We get it. But just because his numbers are better than awful doesn't mean I'm excited about the prospect of Holmes getting into the 8th inning of postseason baseball. I'll tell you this. In the 8th inning, it seems like Boone is looking at Holmes as the guy. And I'll tell you this, I would much rather Schmidt come in the 7th or 8th inning, right? So you're talking about now going from Conley to Weaver to Schmidt. That right there is something that I'm much more excited about. Given with the day's rest and all that, once the series is extended out to 7 games, then I put Schmidt back out there on the starting mound. But I'll tell you this, I just cannot do it where we're out here having Holmes out there in the 8th inning of a postseason baseball game. It's just not practical.
Tonight.
It's tonight. How about after the last 3 months of the season that I've watched? You cannot possibly justify that, well, his numbers are better in the 8th inning than they are in the 9th. Yes, I understand that is technically true. You cannot debate those numbers. They are right there for the reading. But I will tell you, there's no way that Holmes is coming out and any Yankees fan, anyone who cares about this team, is saying, yeah, the Yankees have a good chance here. That I think they really can get out of the situation. No, we're just holding our breath like we need a cigarette. This is not a good situation for the Yankees. It's not opportunistic in any way. So given that situation, why don't you put someone out there you trust to throw strikes in Schmidt, right? You trust to miss bats in Schmidt. He's got the skill set. So there's 2 ways to skin the cat here. You can go 4-man rotation because absolutely Schmidt's earned the role to be in this rotation. But given what's at the back end of this bullpen, I think you're forced to make the choice between Heel and Schmidt and putting them in that 8th or 9th inning role. I just feel like you have to.
No, I get that. I think this is the reality of it. Clark Schmidt has been the best pitcher on the Yankees. He has. He's been the best pitcher on the Yankees. I really wasn't aware of it until I went back and I looked under the hood. He's only given up 19 runs in 71 innings pitched.
Yeah, he just hasn't been on the field. That's his only bugaboo. And if he was healthy, which of course you can't just technically project it because he didn't do it. But as far as performance, you are absolutely correct. Garrett Cole has been dog walked by Schmidt this year. Schmidt he's been accurate with his pitches. His pitches are breaking seemingly more than ever, right? His craft is polished with 3 or 4 pitches now at this point. That's just where he is in his career. And we want to see that in a postseason series. Technically, I agree with you. We probably want to see more of him than less. But as far as what the Yankees have failed at over the course of the last 14 years, it is high leverage situations. It is getting walked off, isn't it? It is having the other team celebrating on the field while we're doing the slow walk off the field. I want some of my best pitchers on the mound in that situation. So I understand exactly where your head's at in terms of how to utilize this rotation. I just disagree on kind of what Boone should decide to do just from the standpoint of, I don't know if I can watch another series where the Yankees lose in that style. I can handle losing. I'm not a poor sport, but losing in a fashion where Clay Holmes is the last player to touch the baseball or one of the last players to touch the baseball, I think that's a recipe for failure. And maybe we use tonight as an example of how that can happen. Or you can look at tonight and say the Yankees can overcome poor pitching in the 8th inning. I don't know. I'm looking at it in the former.
I looked at it more as, wow, Ian Hamilton needs to be the 8th inning guy with Canely and Jake Cousins. And I think, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think they found their closer in Luke Weaver. I mean, he could probably close, be a 2-inning save guy, and I think that's a great thing. He'll probably only, cover 1 inning because they'll try to keep him fresh for all the games, but that's what we're dealing with. So I just, going back to Clark Schmidt, he has not given up more than 3 runs in any of his starts this year. 3 runs is like good. His max. So I just feel like, yeah, maybe, if you're talking about him and Heel has more upside as far as 10 strikeouts, going 8 innings. Clark doesn't really go, a long time. I mean, you get 5 2/3, 4 2/3, 5, 8, 6 2/3, 5. But I think the last thing I'll say is it's honestly one of the more underrated storylines with the New York Yankees right now.
So Schmidt he's prom night. He's just he's a good time, just not a long time.
Nice. But one thing I want to point out with Schmidt before we get into the matchups here, May, 1.82 ERA. September, 1.74. We take that for granted, but that's insane. I want people to understand how ridiculous that is. For him to be a 2.81 ERA guy in April and be a 1.82 guy in May, and then have that much time in between being injured and rehab and all that, and then come back and be your dominant self. The Yankees have something special in Clark Schmidt, and it goes beyond just this postseason. He's going to be in the rotation for a long time. So he's great. I mean, I don't think people realize the type of pitcher that we are talking about, but because he's not the most sexy, he doesn't throw harder than anybody else, but he's got some disgusting stuff on the mound, and a lot of what he does goes unnoticed and untalked about.
Yeah, I definitely thought I was wrong about this player. I just was. I thought Clark Schmidt was a player that he doesn't exactly have wipeout stuff. I can't say I was blown away with his command over the past couple of years. I know he's been a contributor. There's no question about that. But what was his ceiling? I think we both agreed his ceiling. I think you mentioned his ceiling is probably a 2 or 3 in this rotation. I mentioned he's probably a really good 4. Clark Schmidt has proven me wrong. He has proven you wrong. He's shown us that he can be that AJ Burnett guy, right? In a postseason run, the Yankees have to win once. They don't have to win 3 times. They've got to go out there. You mentioned the future. What about the now, right? And you, of course, agree with this. He can be part of the now, part of a run right now, and he's got the command. I know he mentioned in his rehab start, he expected to be behind on the 8 ball. He hasn't pitched. He's been sitting in a trainer's room, getting stretched out, trying to get his arm ready to go, trying to get his lat ready to go. Well, he showed up and said, my command surprised me. Well, you know what that's called, Clark? That's called talent. That's what you got.
Yeah.
You've got talent, son. And when you get out to a mound and you haven't touched a baseball mound in 2.5 months, you show up and say, oh, wow, I can still hit corners. Yeah, that's because you're really good. And that's part of the reason why, after all this break, you're fresh and ready to go. We're going to put you on a mound in October. So I'm excited to watch this kid. The sky's the limit. And let's just hope we're not hoping for the now that he'll get even better. Let's hope it's good enough right this second.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And, 2023, 2022, whatever you want to throw out there, 7.11 ERA in 2020, 5.68 in 2021, 3.12 in 2022, 4.64 in 2023, and now 2.41 in 2024. You know what it tells me? It tells me a guy that always had stuff, but they never really knew how to utilize him. And the one time he got a chance to be a starter was 2023, had no run support. They were playing for nothing. I throw that in the garbage. I mean, I don't care about the 4.64 ERA. This year is more or less what he is. But now we get into the matchups. Because, Gary, if we're being honest, I mean, mathematically, there are probably 8 matchups still available, but we're eliminating the ones that are not likely, right?
Yeah.
So there's 5 matchups here that are possible. And by possible, I mean actually have more than a 0.1% chance. The Orioles are the best chance to happen. They are currently the number 1 team in the wild card. They have a 6-4 lead. The only team on this 5-team list that has a lead on the Yankees in the season series. 3 more to go. They're up 6-4. Funny enough, the Yankees can win those 3 games and take the season series lead out from under the Orioles for the tiebreaker. But the tiebreaker doesn't mean anything even if they do that, because the Orioles are going to be just done. So the Orioles actually have to win probably all 3 of those games the way they're playing. Then you have the Royals, who are 5-2, and they have 2 against the Yankees. I don't know if they want to see the Yankees.
And they're on a bit of a losing streak as well. Don't forget that 4-game losing streak.
Yeah, absolutely. The Twins, they definitely don't want to see the Yankees. Down 6-0 on the year. They have not beaten the Yankees. I don't think they could beat them in an ALDS. I don't. The Tigers, this is an intriguing one. This is a team that I don't think, and I mean, Michael K brought this up, I think, yesterday's show. It's like, I don't think the Tigers knew how good they were capable of being. They probably wish they didn't trade away Jack Flaherty. And I'm of the belief that, yeah, I think that's kind of what happened. I mean, I think they would take Flaherty in a heartbeat right now. So the Tigers winning 10 of their last 13 or whatever, they're hot as hell. They have taken that Yankee series and they have built off it. And they're on the outside looking in, but they could knock the Twins off and get into the postseason.
They just walked Baltimore.
Yeah, they lost the season series to the Yankees, but that last series, that's who the Tigers are. I don't think the Yankees want to face that team. And then the Mariners, who the Yankees are in the process potentially of sweeping if tomorrow goes the way they want it to. The Mariners are down 4-2 to the Yankees. They'll be down 5-2 if they lose on the season series. So, yeah, I mean, those are your 5 teams. I don't have to tell you, when it comes to who's good at what, we know Seattle can pitch. They can't hit. We know that the Orioles, they hit a lot of home runs. They can't pitch. And then you have the Royals, who they have a really, really good rotation, but now they're struggling hitting wise, and they're not really a threat to go yard. And then you have the Twins and Tigers. I don't know what the Twins are really good at, if I'm being honest with you. Like, that's the one team where if the Yankees play the Twins in the ALDS, just book your tickets to the ALCS. But then you have the Tigers, and there's like this aura about the Tigers that I don't like, that I want them to stay away from the Yankees. Truthfully, if I'm being honest with you, like they're hot. They're playing different ball. They have the 3rd best ERA in the big leagues. Honestly, only behind, the Mariners have the best and the Braves. But, playing the Tigers right now feels like almost like playing the Guardians. Like, the pitching is going to be tough. They have kind of these unsung heroes, in their infield. I mean, I don't want to have to go against Scooble. He just roasts the Yankees. I'm not overly a big fan of going up against this team right now. I'm just not. I don't think that they have a bunch of superstars, but they have guys like Riley Green and Matt Vierling who you look at and you're like, well, there's 2 guys right there that could come through in a big spot. So, Gary, looking at these 5 teams, if you were to rank them in order from the team that you most want to play to the least you want to play, how's the order going?
I'm not going to lie to you. The team that I'm most worried about, and I understand trends, I completely understand about what I've said earlier about you want to hit the ground running. You want to be the hottest team in baseball come postseason ball. But the team I'm most worried about in order here, number 1, the Kansas City Royals. This may surprise some people. They're on a 4-game losing streak. I just brought that up. but the style of which they play the game, we just played them. You saw what they want to do. They want to pitch. You got Singer, right? They've got a couple of guys who are dominant. They can shut a game down, but that's not where it ends. Stylistically, what they do offensively, they're trying to get on base, they're not trying to hit homers. Maybe Salvi is, but the rest of that lineup is trying to reach first base. They're trying to hit the ball in the gap and use their legs. Well, you know what the Yankees happen to have a weakness at, and maybe a little less so now that Wells has solidified himself as the starter, has a much better arm back there. It is throwing guys out and controlling the base paths. The Kansas City Royals can expose you in a shorter series. They can expose you in a 5-game series. That's something that has my attention. And I can't say that the Yankees have struggled with this team. They're 5-2 in the season series. They've taken care of business. But if you watch those games in depth, they were tough. That was a tough 5 wins. It just was.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not overly confident against this team. Cleveland, same deal. That's my number 2 team. This is a team that can shut it down the back end of the bullpen. So they know if we can score runs, we got them. We do. And that's the same thing Kansas City's telling themselves. If there's anything we want to be struggling, it's our bats, because scoring is going to be at a premium anyway. Let's go scramble out there. See if we can hit a 2-run homer. See if we can steal a base, maybe hit a Judy single. And you're now talking about a 3-0 lead at Yankee Stadium. Now, all of a sudden, we've got one of the better arms spinning a gem, and the Yankees have all the pressure on them. Good pitching goes a long way in October, but you still have to be a team that can run the base pass strong. You need to be able to expose a team's weakness. Our weakness clearly is the base pass. Those 2 teams, in my opinion, can expose that the best. I'm going with those 2. And I would say, God, who else would I put? I know we said Houston is a team that we've got penciled as one of the contenders that we really want to avoid. But when we're going to face that team is in the championship series, most likely. And I'm not necessarily running from a team in the championship series. You're going to face some of the best teams, some of the hottest teams in baseball at the biggest time of the year. I'm not worried about it. If the Yankees want to go win a World Series, you're going to end up facing the Houstons of the world. We've done it. We've done it time and time again. We've failed. At some point, you got to throw the first punch, and it's got to land. So I'm not worried about them. The last team I'm worried about, to be quite honest with you, is the Baltimore Orioles. This is a team that really is going to go toe-to-toe with us on who can blow the next game the fastest, right? They just designated their closer for assignment. They have no idea who's coming out in the 9th inning. I actually just mentioned to you guys who blew a save for Baltimore 3 days ago. I already forgot his name. You guys already forgot his name. He's not good, okay? There's a reason he wasn't the closer in April. So, having said this, all the weaknesses that you can name that the Yankees have, Baltimore's got those same weaknesses. They just do. They don't have any starting pitching. We've got some pretty decent starting pitching in New York, right? They've got a top ace guy. We've got a top ace guy. Now we're finding some closers. Weaver. Maybe you throw Schmidt out there. Maybe you use Heel. Maybe you use Rodon. They don't have those type of options. They just don't. They've got nowhere to run. So Baltimore is a team, if we face them, if we happen to go face this team out of a wild card and we're hosting a game at Yankee Stadium, you can't beat a Baltimore team that frankly isn't getting anybody out right now. Well, then you frankly don't deserve to win a World Series. All these teams are good. But Baltimore's, in my opinion, right this second, is the furthest team away from being great. And that's the reason I want to face them.
Yeah, I would say, because Gary went off the cuff there, I was talking about the ALDS opponents, and you're listing the whole playoff and everything.
Excited, per usual. I mean, this is what happens when you host a show with me. You just have to know I'm going to get overly hyped up. I'm a Yankees fan. What can I tell you?
No, I'm messing with you. I think with the Orioles, I'm just going to make a blanket statement. I'm not worried about any of these teams because I feel like as long as the Yankees play their brand of baseball, they win any game. When they start to play into other hands, like when we're talking about, hey, that's Salvador Perez, don't pitch to him. Like literally do the exact opposite of pitching to him. And then they give up a grand slam to him or whatever. Like they should have thrown to him. Yeah, that day. So
literally
there are things like that where I'm like, all right, come on. Right. But the Yankees can outslug anybody. They have more home runs than anybody in the league. The only one who's even close to the Orioles. Right. The Guardians have what you would say, you've been saying all year, super bullpen. The Guardians have that. So the Guardians have, and I saw a video earlier today on Twitter, and I cannot find it for the life of me. The Guardians have historically one of the best bullpens going into any postseason ever. So that's concerning, right? But who cares how good your bullpen is if the Yankees get after your starters? Because if I already got 5 on you and that's the magic number in the regular season, what do you think the magic number is in the postseason, Gary? So I feel like, and I know maybe I'm not answering the question or really answering the segment, but the Astros, the Yankees have already beaten the Astros multiple times. I think that monkey is taken off their back. Now, obviously in the postseason, it's different, but Juan Soto is new here. You know, they're new guys that don't have the same, that's more of a fan thing. Maybe Aaron Boone sees the logo in the postseasons like, oh, not again. But I don't feel like that is, you know, widely felt all over this team.
That cloud doesn't
DNA
over everybody.
Yeah, like new DNA, new blood. I mean, Austin Wells, you think he cares? No. So that's kind of how I look at that. With the Mariners, I don't think they're going to make it straight up. They had to win this series, and they're not going to, so I don't see them making it. The Twins are the worst playoff team by far. I think Detroit is scarier than Minnesota. Minnesota does not scare me. Minnesota's run differential is plus 35. Okay. That's 5 lower than the Tigers, right? That's 8 lower than the Mariners, who can't hit. So
Tigers can't hit.
Tigers can't hit. I mean, that's evident. Only 649 runs scored, but they've only given up 609. Minnesota has almost given up 700 runs. The Yankees have given up 627. They've scored 760.
Again, exactly what you said. If you face these teams, right? If you face Minnesota, if you end up seeing Houston in a championship series, if you're worried about this matchup as opposed to this matchup, right? I understand with the style of how Kansas City plays, you don't want to run into somebody who can run the base pass, you know, like a bat out of hell. But having said this, when you're going to go win a World Series, you need to check off more boxes than the other team can check off. That's just how this goes. You show up in a series, you need to play better than them when you face them. And you can't be afraid of anybody. But what we're essentially trying to explain here is which matchups are most opportunistic for this team. And to be honest with you, the best teams the Yankees could face are unathletic teams that can pitch. Now that you can pitch, the Yankees know over the course of this long season, we can also pitch. So now we're just trying to avoid the home run ball. And if you can avoid that, you'll be successful. The Yankees brought in guys, of course, they can hit home runs, and Juan Soto, right? You got Aaron Judge, but they also brought in guys who can run the bases. You got Anthony Vulpi now in the lineup. He can run the bases. There are quite a few guys now in the lineup that have to pick their spots, get aggressive, steal a run or two in a series, change the complexion of a series. I understand it sounds ridiculous to lean on players like Jazz Chisholm, for the Royals to lean on players, right, like Bobby Witt Jr., instead of hitting homers, maybe steal second and third base, and how that can change a series. It's not ridiculous. It's how baseball's played. It's how baseball is played when everybody cares, when everybody's holding on runners the best that they know how, right? When runs are at a premium. The difference between Dave Roberts stealing second base and not is the difference between the Yankees winning the World Series in 2004. It goes to show you, not the best players on the field are going to change the complexion of series. So I tell you guys this because when you're looking at a team and wondering, is this a team we want to play? Is this a team we want to avoid? Look at their roster and say, do they do the things that can help expose what we fail at? If the answer is yes, you can go ahead and hope that those teams can eliminate themselves. And I know, Jake, we had that conversation about Kansas City. And you mentioned Salvi, what he does against left-handed pitching, what that matchup looks like with Carlos Rodon, which, by the way, when we talk about Carlos Rodon's a player that we expect to be getting starts in October. I don't expect him to use him the way we asked him to.
Yeah, no, of course not.
So if you're playing Kansas City, You're asking that exact same situation that we saw with Devers and Cole when Rodon comes up to pitch. Are you going to throw up the 4 or are you going to pitch?
4.
And that can be right. But they caught a lot of flack for how that situation panned out. I believe that the New York Yankees look at that situation a little shell-shocked and say, we got to pitch to Salvi. You can nibble, and Rodon has proven he cannot do that very well. So it's not a series I want. It's just not.
No, but you know what I'll say is this. There are some things that you can do to kind of eliminate teams, right? Like, for instance, if I'm the Kansas City Royals, a negative road team, like, that doesn't translate well to the postseason. Part of the reason it's why that they're only 82-71, despite the fact that they feel like they're one of the upper echelon teams in the AL. But right. They're 82-71. They are 6 games behind the Guardians. And the Guardians win on the road. They win at home, right? The Twins do not win on the road. The Twins also only have, Kansas City's 4 deep in their rotation. I'd say the Twins are 2. Bailey Ober gives up a ton of home runs, and so does Pablo Lopez. Those guys they've given up home runs in the mid-20s. That's way too many. That's Rodon territory. So
love how you use one of our players to expose that's a lot.
That's Rodon, though. Because Rodon gives up that. So, then you look at the Guardians, you're like, okay, super bullpen, Bibby is pitching well, Lively. They don't have a ton of options. Like, when you really think about it, that starting rotation isn't great. They're winning games because of their bullpen. They're winning games because they're putting up runs. Jose Ramirez, guys like that, Steven Kwan. So I don't look at the Guardians as anything the Yankees can't topple. I don't look at the Royals. I don't look at the Twins. The Tigers are hot now, and the Tigers also, for whatever reason, are really good on the road. But I don't look at the Tigers as anything the Yankees can't beat. So then you go to the Astros, and you're like, okay, well, the Astros win at home. They win on the road. They are currently 3rd place. It seems like overnight, 3rd place in run differential in the AL, only behind the Yankees and Royals. And now you're like, okay, are the Astros getting hot? And you look and you're like, I have Alvarez hitting for average and hitting bombs. I have Jose Altuve. He's got 180 hits on the year. Pena's still a good player. Bregman. You have pedigree. That's your favorite word.
I'm going to eliminate it. I feel like I've used it too much, especially when we're talking about Houston. I'm done talking about pedigree because, you're totally right. Houston is a team that they know in October they're going to play their best baseball. It's just what they do. And the Yankees tend to play less than what they're accustomed to. They seem to be this regular season juggernaut over the course of the last 6 years that for some reason don't bring their best effort in October. So that's got to change in a hurry.
Yeah. And furthermore, I'll say this. I'm not overly impressed with what they got out of Josh Hader this year. He wasn't Josh Hader that they paid him to be. At times he was, but a 3.26 ERA, it's a little high for me. Now, another thing I'll say is when you look at this team, they're 3 deep. I don't trust Spencer Arrighetti, or however you say his name. I don't trust him. They got Blanco, they got Brown, and they got Valdez. They do not have Verlander. I cannot trust Verlander at all.
They don't trust Verlander.
That dude is at the end of his career. So when you only have 3 guys, this is where you see what I'm getting at now. Like, the Yankees are either going to do it or they're not, but it's going to be because of the Yankees. Because if you go around the league, and this is part of the problem, you're listening to a Yankees show. So we've been very positive. We've been very negative. We've been realists. We want to give you the best insight. So the reality is when you look at the Yankees, you'd be hard pressed to find teams that have better than they do in anything. I mean, their lineup is the best in the league. Their pitching, I mean, I would say right now, the Yankees are 5 deep, and you could argue 6 deep. Now, I would say 5 deep, but Stroman, some people would argue, yeah, he's part of that rotation. You have 6 guys. If Poteet doesn't get hurt, you have 7 guys. So the Yankees have that. Now they figured out the closer spot with Luke Weaver, who's been just pitching I mean, he's been insane,
Lights
right?
out.
Since he became the closer. Just absolutely insane. But my point here, he's striking out 13 in 6 2/3. That's ridiculous.
Seems decent.
Yeah. So I guess my point is the Yankees really are the best team in the AL. I'm not speaking on the NL currently, just talking about the AL. I don't think it's remotely close, Gary. I really don't. They have the wins on the road. They have the wins at home because they shored up that home, record. I mean, initially their home record wasn't good, if you remember. It was, and then it started to not look good and so forth. It's now up to 42 and 33, right? Their road is 47 and 30. The next best road record in the league, San Diego. They have 45 wins and 30 losses. That's it. The Dodgers, they're 42 and 35.
And San Diego was the team I told you that if we made it to a World Series, was the team I was actually most worried about in the championship. Well, there you go.
They could steal that West. On the road. They could steal the West. It's 3.5 games out.
Right. They definitely can. But again, what you do at home, it's important. But remember, the Dodgers are the best home baseball team. They just are. No one wants to see them at Dodger Stadium. And yet, last year, the Arizona Diamondbacks just go right into Dodger Stadium. And the style of which they played the game, they were running all over the place. Diamondbacks weren't a better team than the Dodgers. And I understand some people will say, well, if you win the World Series, you're the best team. And I say touche. But if you're the best team, why'd you win 86 games? Why is it that you can't go out there, take care of business, and be hosting games at Chase Field? There's a reason that happened the way that it did. And that is sometimes matchups don't play in your favor. So to your point, I'm in complete agreement with you. While there are matchups I want to avoid, like Kansas City, like Cleveland, who have a monster back end of their bullpen, the Yankees have to be the Yankees. And you need to stop looking at what these other teams do well, what they fail at, and say, well, hopefully we run into the easy matchup. Hopefully we run into Minnesota and then Houston falls short. We don't have to deal with that storyline, so we face an easier matchup. Yes, that's good for the Yankees. But if the Yankees don't play their best brand of baseball, if they don't play championship baseball, you're not going to be able to hide your way and win a World Series. You're not going to be able to sneak your way to a World Series. It just doesn't work that way. Some team is going to get hot, and the Yankees are going to have to run into that hot baseball team and be hotter.
I love it. And last thing I'll say, don't take the Yankees making the playoffs for granted. They missed it last year. I saw there were some people on Twitter like, why are they so excited? Like they didn't even win the AL East. I understand, like for Soto, it may not be a big deal, although it should be because he's with his new team and everything. Right. But Aaron Judge, Austin Wells, Jason Dominguez, Glaber, guys that were playing at the end of last year, that meant a lot more than maybe they're going to show. And I think it should, because I think there's nothing wrong with having pride in your work, taking pride in your work. And the Yankees have a lot to be feeling good about, but it's a 24-hour rule. So, once you've gotten that out of your system and you've partied, and I'm sure they're still doing that probably right now. But once you got that out of your system, now the next job in the checklist is to win the AL East. And you should be going balls to the wall to do it ASAP. And then once you do that, continue to not just, run and then put your foot on first base and stay there. No, you need to carry yourself through the bag. So that is what I want to see them do. I'm encouraged. It really kind of feels like this could be a World Series team. It has that kind of feel. It feels, for whatever reason, Gary, this team feels different than years past. I don't know why, but towards the end of the year, I'm seeing that. I just think in the past, the Yankees have had, for this not being a great team, the Yankees sure have a lot of things that they've shored up towards the end of the year. They have their closer. They got their starting rotation pitching lights out as of late. They're not afraid to make moves like calling up Jason Dominguez. We can get on them for how annoying it was, the slow playing. He's up now, taking Stroman out of the rotation, putting him in the bullpen, trying the double-barreled action, moving around the lineup, giving Austin Wells a shot and keeping him there when he, succeeded as the cleanup hitter. Glaber finding it, refining him, I guess, as the leadoff hitter. There's a lot of things that will get lost in translation that I think have prepped the Yankees for this moment. And I think in the past, when you look at Yankees teams, I haven't been overly impressed with their ability to win on the road. And I feel like this year they've been really good at it. And I know I'm not crazy, because guess what? In 2022, which a lot of people would say was a better team, they won 99 games.
Right.
They won 57 games at home. Great. They only went 42-39 on the road. This is a much better road team than the 2022 team. So that's kind of how I see it. And then, kind of the barometer there, 2009, you're never going to be like 103. No one's going to even have 103 wins this year. The 2009 championship team, they went 57-24 at home. They went 46-35 on the road. They scored 915 runs, gave up 753, and they finished out the season in the regular season 7-3. So that's another thing. I look at that 2022 back and forth. They finish out the season 5-5. We're going to see. But again, what I mentioned in 2009, they gave up 753 runs. They just scored 915 for it not to make a big deal. The Yankees this year have only given up 627. And I understand the season's not over and that's going to go up. It will.
Goes to show you how bad offenses are struggling now.
Yeah.
We're the second best offense in the league, and the 2009 Yankees scored that many more runs than us.
I know. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, wild. Man. But yeah, maybe it's false hope, and that's certainly possible. But I don't know, man. I think the thing that is really underrated is that they're 17 games above 500 on the road. I don't think that has been given enough air, except for us, really. I haven't seen many people bring that up. And that matters in the postseason when you're guaranteed to play multiple road games every single series. So look, maybe I'm overreacting to it, but I think the Yankees have all the makings to win the World Series. They just have to do it.
Can I say one thing before you give us your movie? And I think this needs to be said because, and I won't say the people who put this in the comment section aren't the type of people who will be here for the hour and 17-minute long podcast that we record, because it's just the way that they are as a person. But we need to remember something that's key here. It's if you make the prediction that a certain team will not win the World Series, you more than likely will be correct.
Yeah.
There you go. If you're saying the Yankees aren't going to win the World Series in 2024, you're more than likely going to be right. But you know what? If you said any other team in baseball, if you said the Houston Astros are not going to win the World Series, it's more times than not, Houston's not going to win in October. It's very difficult. And we know, as two podcasters in our first year covering this team as extensively as we are fully aware that the New York Yankees aren't overwhelmingly likely to win the World Series. It just doesn't work that way. This isn't the NBA. We know. But given the opportunity, are the Yankees more likely to win the World Series than the other teams in the field, at least in the American League? We believe so. I've said that I think there's maybe one team in the National League, and that is the San Diego Padres or the Arizona Diamondbacks. I would probably say San Diego. That I would say I think they have a better chance to win the World Series, but I gave you a list that is one name long. So that's what the Yankees are up against. Does the best team win in October every year? Never. Never seems that way, does it? That's the reason what makes that 98 season so special. A team that's the best team all year shows up in the postseason baseball, proves they're the best, and they go home, right? It was a very clear and concise season. There was no questions asked. We talk about them as the greatest baseball team arguably ever, right? The Yankees just need to be the best in October. We think they have a legitimate chance. They have flaws, but they've got more strengths than most other teams. And that's why I think we're so excited. And hopefully those of you who are on the fence about this team, you can at least smell the flowers of what they just did. They're in the postseason again. Jake mentioned we weren't there last year. This is a good thing. Now it's on to the next thing and the next thing. And we will do it one by one until we are World Series champions. And if not, we will build it again. We will show up in the offseason and say exactly what we think needs to happen to go win a World Series. But until that happens, let's root for the next thing.
I like that. Well, I know the sky isn't falling in Yankee land, but it sure is for the Orioles. So I'm going to go with Skyfall.
Look at you.
I thought you guys needed a really, really good movie recommendation after a really, really good day. I mean, you talk about clinching a playoff berth, and that's great and all, but it's the way they did it. This game was over. It was 1-0. Clay Holmes is going to come in the eighth, lock it down. Ninth inning, Luke Weaver's automatic, right? Wrong. Clay Holmes gives up a home run to a guy who he's probably like 58 years old now. Justin Turner, he's been in the league forever. Gives up the home run. It's 1-1. The Yankees can't get anything going. Then bottom of the ninth comes. They get out of that. Now you have extra innings in a game that should have been won. And they didn't score a lot of runs today, but big ups to Anthony Rizzo, who came through not once but twice today. And big ups to the Yankees for just finding a way to get it done. Wasn't going to be easy. No one cares about style points, especially September baseball. Just get it done. And the Yankees have been that team as of late. They've just been getting it done. So it's why that they, clinched today. They should have clinched 2 weeks ago, but that was an organizational flaw, having Clay Holmes close. So I like that they're moving on. They're controlling what they can control. They're keeping everything in front of them. And great win today. Put Skyfall in the comments section if you stuck around to watch the full video. And I'll tell you right now, go and watch Skyfall, okay? Because Daniel Craig is James Bond. I mean, come on now. It's just
I think Justin
fantastic.
Turner might be old enough to be the next James Bond at this point.
He'd have to cut his hair though. I don't think they'd
and dye it. He's gonna have to dye that thing black. There's not gonna be a redhead James Bond. It's just not gonna happen.
Well, I mean, if we
win the World Series, I'll dye my hair red.
He won't do that. No
you
way.
You don't think I'll dye my hair red if we win the World Series?
I mean, you probably will, but don't actually do it.
No, I'll do it. No, I don't care. I'll do it.
It'll be.
It's been long enough. It's been 14 years. I was in 9th grade when we won the World Series. Empire State of Mind came out with Jay-Z and Alicia Keys the last time we won the World Series. It's time to do something crazy if this team wins. It just is. I don't know if YouTube lets us drink on the show, so I won't do that. But if they do, then I would. I'd pop champagne on the show.
Oh, I did that when the Rams beat the 49ers in the NFC title game. I had a Blue Moon in hand.
Okay, good. So as long as I'm allowed to do that,
yeah,
I'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're not promoting it, but also then again, who cares if you were? If it was a paid promotion, bug off.
Yeah, I am promoting it. You can do anything you want, drink as much as you want, not responsibly. We don't care. As long as the Yankees win the World Series, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, burn couches and, party like it's, what do they say? Party like it's 09?
Yeah, I don't even.
How spoiled are we? We're upset they haven't won in 15 years, but 09 is the last time. Do you know how many times it's like, oh yeah, party like it's 66, and they're talking about 1966?
Dude. 1966 is like 60 years ago. It's almost 60 years ago. It's just, so I'm here to tell you guys right now, it's absolutely locked in, set in stone. If the Yankees win the World Series, I'll dye my hair red. I know some of you are saying, well, I guess you're not going to be doing that.
The microphone
again, like
red.
I said. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's got to be in the budget first. Once it's in the budget, I'll get a red microphone. Well, red microphone, no.
No. The microphone, so you have the red pop filter. You got to dye it like that red.
Oh, yeah. And people are probably wondering, where'd that thing go? It's actually on the floor, and Jake said it was staticky, so I can't use it. So now I'm using my brother's Yeti, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
And probably sounds like I'm talking through a Sprite can, but, what are you going to do about it? Paging in from Gary from Mars? Yeah. Yeah.
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah, so we appreciate you guys. The Yeti should be fine, but
Yeah.
no, we appreciate you guys. Drop Skyfall in the comment section to prove you were here at the end.
Absolutely. And like this video.
Oh, look at you.